Thank you, Swamiji, and thank you, Amish. Swamiji mentioned several interesting points. The people often ask, why does it matter what Indologists are saying? Who cares? So, as Swamiji said, the idea of Aryan-Dravidian divide, of course, matters to us because it's a huge part of politics in India. And until 1800, such a theory didn't exist. It's a creation of the Indologists. Max Miller, in the 1800s, developed the Aryan invasion theory for the first time. And Robert Caldwell, a bishop from Britain, developed the Dravidian theory within 10 years plus minus. So colleges were set up by the British in the north, colleges were set up in the south, developing these two divergent theories. And over a few generations, we started accepting it. We started having political fights, political parties because of this. So obviously it matters. What somebody started somewhere matters. It's not just, that who cares. We have to be concerned about all these things. Caste, we had Jati and Varna. Quite flexible. People can change. Varna is based on Guna and Karma. Gita says that very clearly. It doesn't say your father's Guna and your father's or parents' Karma. It says yours. And the Lord Risley, who was the head of the Census Bureau of British people here, he was given the job of counting all the subjects of the empire. So he organized all the jatis into castes, created a hierarchy, official hierarchy to measure people in the census. In every 10 years, for 40 years, every 10 years he did this census. That was the first time ever in the history of India that list of castes with a certain hierarchy had official status of the state, using it to give people, benefits and treat them differently and whatnot. That making official state policy based on this kind of a census of this hierarchy there had never been this sort of thing before, and we are suffering the price of it. Swamiji also mentioned a very, very important point. Itihas being mistranslated as mythology. Many years ago, a friend of mine who was reading I used to have a discussion group in those days, different than the one I currently have. And I used to talk about these issues a lot. So he was a professor in a university, and he told me that in his university they're teaching a course called World Mythologies. And in that, he sent me the curriculum, the syllabus, and said, what do you think they're talking about? Hindu mythology, Greek mythology, African mythology, and so on. So sometimes the prejudice is not stated, but the prejudice is in what's not stated, what's left out. So I said, I do not see in this list of mythologies, I do not see Christian mythology or Islamic mythology or Jewish mythology. And he said, oh, that's interesting. Maybe, I said, no, maybe. You have a religion department. They're teaching religious studies. It's not that they don't never thought of this. So I said, the way would be, you go and write a letter. And my friend was incredibly naive, and that's why he actually wrote the letter. So I said, you write a letter saying that it's an interesting course and I think you should complete it, make it more comprehensive, and students should also learn the Christian mythology and Jewish mythology and Islamic mythology. And he sent me the reply he got was such an angry reply from the dean, saying you have no idea what will happen to the identities of our people if you tell them that their faith is a mythology. So it proved the point. For us, it was being marketed as, oh, we are celebrating the exotic mythology. I said you should go and tell them the exotica of virgin birth, very exotic idea. Yeah. So I always do this sort of thing, And the long and the short is this fellow got very passionate, and he fought a campaign. He later left the university for whatever reason, I don't know what, but joined something else. But this was live discussion in our e-group, and it educated a lot of people that this simple, harmless things we accept, try and reverse it on the other guy. Try and reverse it. Now you see, for Westerners, Western mythology is Greek and Latin. That's dead. It's their past. It's the civilizations, pre-Christian civilizations which they conquered. So, of course, that's not their worldview, that's not living, and so those views are myth, Greek myth, Latin myth. You see? That's why Sanskrit Bharati and I both do not like the word classical, Sanskrit as a classical language. Because Greek and Latin, the definition of classic is dead languages that are lived in, that sit in a museum. Scholars study it with great respect, like you have some dead ancestors, you have a picture with Mala, is a dead, you respect it of course, but they're not living, it's not the same thing. So, Mandarin is not studied by the Chinese as a classical language. They don't want it in the classical department, because they're saying it's old, but also living now. Similarly, Arabic, similarly Persian. You can be an ancient language and be alive. You don't have to be classical. So this business of respecting us as classical, we all go write checks and say, oh, I'll fund the classical department introducing Sanskrit. But we don't realize that there's a hidden meaning there. You see, for them, it's the language of a dead civilization. Because the Western theory of time and change, history, is different than Itihas. I'm so happy that Swamiji said it. In Itihas, new things happen, but they don't attack, bury, kill the past. There is no disconnect and discontinuity. You know, the person in a particular European country does not think of the prior 100,000 years ago as our heritage. It's sort of like it happened in our soil. The Muslim people do not think of the pyramids were our ancestors. It's our ancestor. It is not part of us because it's a dead civilization. We conquered it, finished off. So in Itihas, we take it forward. It's more cumulative, like in an encyclopedia. You keep adding more knowledge. You don't expunge, you just add more knowledge. So it keeps building up. So we are able to consider all of that as living. Ramayana is living. Something long ago, but it's also alive. We improvise, we adapt it, we dramatize it, we do all those things. So this business of classical, this business of myth has very deep consequences. And I'm so glad Swamiji said that. And I'm also happy that Chinmaya Mission is committing to setting up an Indology university. I am so happy. Because this is one of the major passions for writing this book, is to encourage Swadeshi Indology. So my humble input is not to get Videshi Indologists to come and set it up for us. We are so proud that they are studying us. Are Saab, I'm so honored that you are studying me. That sort of thing. That, kind of a complex we have. Up till we've arrived, sir, because they're also studying us. That sort of thing. But then that study brings with it certain assumptions like the Aryan theory, like all the things we talked about. So if you connect it with spiritual tradition, the Indian scientific inquiry, which is rational, need not be scientific, need not be sacred, but rational, could be sacred, could be looked at in that way, or could be looked at in another way. If you connect it, if you take Indology as consisting of all the knowledge systems and a very indigenous view, I think you'll have a very unique university. And our goal should be to create Indology, be the Indology hub of the world, like we have IT, if we can do IT, we can do pharmaceuticals, we can do diamond exports from here, we can do automobile parts, all kind of industries, we can be the world hub. Why can't we be for Indology? So why is it that we are importing Indology? Yeah. Why? So a lot of people say we're funding those guys, Indians, because we're no good. So I'm saying, hey, if we are no good, then that all the more is a job to make us good, raise the standard of our people, our Indology. If we could, 30 years ago, we were not necessarily a world center for software or many of these, pharmaceutical industries and so on. So our people put their mind to it and said, okay, in one generation we will become world standard. So if we can become world standard in so many things, then we should also become world standard in the study of our own civilization and not outsource that to somebody else. Because the best studies in China, about China, are in Chinese. are in Mandarin, and Chinese people control the studies. And similarly for Arabic, Persian, Japanese, French, Russian. Most of the great civilizations that are very proud of themselves, they control the discourse. And we have abandoned that and given it to others. So I'm very happy that Chinmaya Mission is taking the lead in bringing this back. So, Swamiji's also important point about lighting the lamp being discontinued in many places. I've had this in prestigious venues in Delhi. Renting a hall, there's a protocol that we are secular, so you cannot light a lamp. Now imagine Swamiji saying, from our point of view, we are not excluding the guy who is secular or atheist from our point of view. But from their point of view, they're excluding us. So it's a one-way kind of exclusion. And respect has to be mutual. So I'm very happy that these points are made. I'm also I was really impressed. I'm really impressed by the story that Amish is a fantastic storyteller, and I'm so happy that he's writing on our past and our spiritual traditions. And the story of the insider view of environmentalism and the outsider view of environmentalism is amazing. It captures the essence of what I'm writing in this book, the insiders versus the outsiders in the study of Sanskrit and Sanskriti. And while the insider has love and care and rasa, bhav towards this plant, certain attitude, the outsider is dry and aloof, separated. So I think that captures it. I would take it even further. In the case of the study of our civilization, it's an important point. The outsider is an insider to his own civilization. He is not an outsider. He is an outsider to us, but an insider to an alternative civilization, and in some ways competing. It's interesting. So it would be like the coach is an outsider to our team. But what if the coach is an insider to his team? That would be. So it's actually, you have to think of the outsider as an insider to his team. So if you give a grant to such an outsider to study us, it's like saying, okay, we'll have General Musharraf who will run the military academy for us. The point being that such an outsider, of course the outsider has advantages that he's not attached and he can be objective and all that, but such an outsider is an insider to something else. Now, in the religious studies in the West, they have their own vocabulary. One of the terms they developed is called God's eye, God's view, which means that this is not a view from your culture, my culture, this is God's view. It means it is sort of outside, it's really objective. It's not contextualized, it's not biased by being inside anything. It's outside, it's God's view. But my response is that who are you to pretend or to know what is God's view? So the whole colonizing mission was a project of claiming that the Western particular view was universal, claiming the universality and objectivity of what is actually the result of Western history, their particular events, their geography, their fights, their wars, whatever happened to them, that resulted in a certain experience, certain philosophies emerged out of that. And brilliant things happened, there's no doubt about that. But to claim that this is God's view, and this is sort of an external view, is sort of very arrogant. So I think we're all on the same page on this, the importance of, we should respect all these views. We have a tradition called Purva Paksha, where you study somebody else's views, and then you put that Paksha, you give a response, and they do Purva Paksha on us, and then they give a response to us. So in a sense, you might say, Western Indology is their Purva Paksha of us. Is their Purva Paksha Ramayana, their Purva Paksha Vedas. It is from their particular point of view, a critique of us, an assessment of us. So there's nothing wrong if we do the same back. We also should do Purva Paksha Western Indology. So I'm hoping that Chinmaya Mission's Indology University will have a strong Purva Paksha department of the rest of the world. We never, are strong. People ask me, why did India decline? And I've had many ideas over the years. But recently I've had conversations with some other scholars, well-known scholars in our field. And one of the ideas that's emerging out of these conversations is that we stopped doing Purva Paksha, which means we became ignorant of others. We were at one time vibrant because of this tradition of debate, like Amish said. All views are welcome and we have equal debates. There's no banning of books, burning of books tradition, no blasphemy in our civilization. It's very important. So different ideas can be in play. Not a particular person may accept this one, but it's in play. So there can be a rat temple, maybe long or snake temple. Maybe a long time ago somebody had this. There's no reason to ban it, change it. We have all kinds of social cultural groups in this country. We have transvestites. There is this huge parade going on in USA to get rights for transvestites. I tell them that the Hijras are one of the oldest tribes mentioned in Mahabharata also. We don't need rights. We don't need to parade to get them rights. Nobody denied them rights to begin with. Nobody denied them rights to begin with. So you see, this is how Itihas evolves differently than break from in history. Break. Okay, now this new revelation has come. We accept this prophet or we reject it. We'll fight. We'll clash violently. That discontinuity has to do with the idea of prophets bringing change. So there's a prophet who brought 1.0 released, and somebody brought 2.0, and somebody brought 3.0, like that. So in a sense, Judaism is 1.0 because original messages were given only for Jews, And then came Jesus, who said, "I'm the Son of God. I bring you an update." And this is a new covenant. Christians respect the old prophets, but they consider this to be new, replacing the previous ones. So you could run DOS, but you're better off running Windows. It's sort of thing. Now the person who's accepting both, the person who says previous one is a legitimate one, it's not a pirated, it's not a virus, it's a legitimate, but this new one is better, means that I honor that as a past, but it is obsolete, so you better get onto the new one. If the person who's running the old one accepts this point of view, then he better upgrade. So Jews can't accept Jesus, but Christians can accept Judaism. You understand? You can accept the previous one because it has been superseded by your version, your release, without you being threatened. And you can say in a condescending, patronizing way that they're still running on old DOS, but that's okay, we don't mind it, but they don't know yet, we're trying to convince them. Similar relationship exists between the 2.0 Christianity and the 3.0 Islam. Because Islam accepts all the past prophets. It makes a list of all the Jewish prophets and Jesus and says they're all prophets. Legitimate. But this is the new prophet, therefore the new prophecy supersedes the past. It's new. It's like a lawyer will say that this is a valid contract, it was superseded by this contract, then it was amended by this contract, then this. And so all the contracts are kept on the file. But the latest one predominates and supersedes and prevails over the previous ones. So Islam can have this attitude towards Christianity. But Christianity cannot accept Islam as being legitimate because otherwise you better upgrade. You become Muslims if you feel that way. So this discontinuity of history is a consequence of this whole idea that prophets bring new insights. Whereas I argue in my book, many of the books I've written explain in detail. We have the Rishi state, we have the Adhyatmic state. So it is not some few prophets who can bring this. Everybody has got the Satchitananda potential. Everybody is Satchitananda. And everybody has a higher state of consciousness potential to understand and realize for himself this kind of a thing. So we don't have a discrete list of prophets and the lineage ends. It continues. And everyone can have their experience in their own context and have their own interpretation of the same thing. So these are not simple differences, but very profound differences between the continuity of our civilization and the discontinuity that others have. The Indians, another point I want to make is that Western Indology is not just what Westerners are doing. Indians are studying Western Indology, particularly social sciences people. I was at TIS yesterday, had a very interesting event. I have put up the videos, you can watch it now. So I'm going next week to Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi. See, I want mutually respectful discussions with opponents. I have never excluded, I always invite them, they just don't come. But from their side, they try to exclude, keep the guy out and whatnot. So I wish that were not the case, because it would be good for all of us to learn from each other. I learn a lot from different people, all such. So the point is that Indology started in Europe as a study of India. We always had our own systems of studying, but a formal system of studying us from the outside started in Europe, and now it is an American-dominated enterprise. Sometimes they call it South Asian studies, sometimes Indology, by whatever name. It is also predominantly an outsider view. Now, the fact of the matter is that every Indian university basically adopts Western ideas of our history, Western ideas of our Sanskriti, a lot of Western ideas in political science, social sciences. These are Western ideas. We haven't generated an Indian Uttar Paksh, our response, our Pratipaksh, our theory. What is our view? We haven't done that. We really don't have an Indian social sciences. It's still colonized most of the time. So while I often target the root of this, which is located in the West, while the root is in the West, the fruits are all over here. So if you want to, rather than one fruit at a time, you have to go to the roots. So that is why I do this. And it's not, you cannot just say, okay, that's happening, those people are doing it, we shouldn't bother about it. The point is, it comes here, it affects all of us. And so the franchising of Western ideas about us is rampant. It's a huge industry. It's a huge industry of young people wanting to go get a degree somewhere, come back, become the expert. Then if you're very good, they'll make you editor of a journal or in charge of something. So there's a whole recognition and reward system, and people cannot get bought into that gradually. And then they're alienated before they become substantial, they become professors and become important people in the study of our civilization. You find that they are more or less like the other side. They are also hating this civilization, always finding something wrong, and it's no good, it's a cause of problems and so on. So you must keep that in mind. Another implication, another consequence of this global study of our civilization is that a lot of our knowledge is being taken away. A lot of the knowledge is studied, taken out of the context of Indian thought, Indian culture, and repackaged and claimed as belonging to someone else, distorted to fit somebody else's paradigm. So now there's Christian yoga, which is rapidly expanding. And there is Vipassana has been separated largely from the Buddhist roots and turned into mindfulness meditation. And Yoga Nidra is becoming lucid dreaming. And transcendental meditation is called relaxation response by Professor Herb Benson at Harvard, who studied TM, learned it, studied TM, did research on TM, and he was part of the TM researchers. So when he found that, he's a neuroscientist, when he found that a lot of extraordinary things were being achieved by TM, rather than continue that research because it would credit the Vedic knowledge, he came up with a parallel system with a new name called relaxation response, put a trademark on it as his own discovery, and then took all that research and came up with it as the research for his technique, when it's actually using transcendental meditation. So this whole system of appropriation of mathematics is a big story. someone told me that Navya Nyaya, appropriation of Navya Nyaya is one of the most prolific areas of Western philosophy today. He was telling me yesterday. Sad thing is that my bandwidth allows me to produce only one book every year or two. And I have 50 of these ideas, each one of them needs a whole book. So when I told this gentleman yesterday, write me a paper. I mean, our people they know this, but they don't have maybe they're lazy, too busy or whatever, but they're not going to sit down and write it up and publish it and fight the battle. You have to do that by being an author. By just telling the story to a few people hardly matters. So we need to take on this battle. Now, I want to take a lot of questions, but just I'll make a few points. Sanskrit and Sanskriti are inseparable. So, to protect one, you're protecting the other, and if you destroy one, you're also affecting the other. Sanskrit as an architecture, it's not just a language, it's a structure. And that structure shows up in dance, it shows up in yajna, it reflects mirrors the structure of the cosmos, the whole rhythm of the cosmos. It's in your body, it's outside, it's in medicine, it's in architecture, buildings and whatnot, and raga. So the same structures mirror many domains. Many domains, they map, reflect each other. And the structure, this architecture, consists of many components that are weaved together. And you cannot just arbitrarily eliminate, surgically cut, throw out something without affecting the whole structure. And the problem with some other civilization wanting to appropriate is that not everything will fit. So they will cut out what doesn't fit. What doesn't fit, they'll cut out. So for instance, in Christian yoga, they cannot accept certain things like karma and reincarnation. That aspect of Yoga Sutra, they cannot accept. There is also a huge movement called Christian Vedanta. Christian Vedanta is a huge movement. People written books called Christian Vedanta. Wayne Peace from the Catholic Church wrote it, and so on, many people. And they've developed a lot of interesting ideas out of that. But the basic metaphysics is a dualistic one, so it cannot accept certain premises. And therefore, while to a naive person, naive Hindu, it looks like they're doing us a favor, they're accepting it, they're respecting it. The fact is, if you look at it in great detail, many important things are surgically removed. And that creates a problem for us. This is where I champion the idea that non-translatables, certain words are non-translatables. They should be preserved in that word should be preserved. Because you translate it to something else, it has a whole history, it has its own baggage, it has its own context, and the original nuance of that word is lost. And that word has no equivalent in the other language because it did not have the same experience. So like Shraddha, you cannot say what is Shraddha. It's like that. Yeah. So they say things like in this, the battle for Sanskrit, I'm critiquing these people who say that there was no concept of nation in India. But I tell them that there was a concept of Rashtra. So I don't have to legitimize myself in your category. I'm fine using my category. It's a concept of we, the common we. And the concept of the common we as a Rashtra is not necessarily the same as a nation, but so what? Why do we have to apologize and claim this way or that way? The persons I'm criticizing also say there's no such thing as Indian civilization in the past. That is a recent idea for chauvinistic purposes. Say there's a past, it's a unity. And the left wing today tells you that when you say unity of civilization, you're Brahmanical, you're Sanskritized, you're saffronized. What about the Dalits? They have nothing to do with it. What about these? What about those? They try to tell you that. And so the challenge is made that there was no word for it. So I bring up the word Sanskriti. We have a word Sanskriti, which is our collective, understanding, collective ideas, beliefs, systems, languages, literature, all of that is our Sanskriti. And while it may not be exactly the same as what they call civilization, it is our sense. It's our sense of that. It's something equivalent to that. The oral tradition is another debating point in this book. the Western scholars do not accept the oral tradition's history as part of our history because, for one thing, they can't pronounce things well, and they prefer written to oral. And also, if you want to say that things are not as old as the tradition says, you can say we dismiss the whole oral part of the history because a lot of that past is oral. And the argument given is we don't have reliable data, but that's a practical argument. The other argument given for rejecting the oral tradition is that oral is a very insidious and strong point they make, that the oral tradition, oral knowledge is incapable of progress, because when you are doing things orally, you memorize it and it's static. So it's like an iPod, and you keep pushing the button and keep repeat the same thing. It's never going to get better and improve and evolve and reflect. Whereas the moment you write, others will challenge it. When knowledge becomes written according to them, then others will challenge it. So when we have literary festivals, literary means written. The oral tradition is not included as part of the literary. Okay, so I would claim that if you look at our history, long before written, the oral knowledge was evolving. You see debates, you see grammar. Before Panini, there's this one, before that one, another one, another one. You see these things evolving. So the evolution of knowledge is there even within the oral tradition. You can't say it's frozen and fixed and static. It is dynamic. So a lot of these debates exist, and some of our own people are kind of, the positions they take I would argue with. The relationship between Sanskrit and vernaculars is another interesting one. The Western Indologists take the view that they're kind of competing, hostile. Sanskrit is dominant, it's kind of doing violence to the language, it's brought by the foreign guys, and the local vernaculars emerged here, and the Sanskrit kind of controlled and whatnot, and then it imposed its grammar on the others. So it's sort of a asymmetric power game, this show. But actually, the vernaculars were very innovative, being informal. I would say the difference is not dominant versus subordinate. The relationship is formal versus informal, because Sanskrit is a formal, structured grammar language, and the vernacular is informal. So you can create new buzz, new cool words, and interesting things. You can improvise. You can come up with experiments of new things, and some of them go viral. It happens today. A word is invented, and it goes viral. And so now you're WhatsApping, like that. So you do that. And then if a word becomes part of the vernacular, Sanskrit borrows it. And then Sanskrit exports it to a lot of other languages. So it's kind of an architecture that communicates between this language and that language. It's not about being dominant and subordinate. It's not that. It's sort of the common architecture. What they're now trying to do with English, making it the medium that communicates between language X and language Y. That's sort of thing. But there is hope with technology. There's a new technology of natural language processing in computer science, computational linguistics, where language X can be translated to language Y as you're speaking, without a human being. So you speak in Japanese and it produces in Swahili, and that guy speaks in Swahili and this guy hears in Japanese. This sort of a real-time language translation is emerging very rapidly and becoming better and better. And guess the technology's inner structure is Panini's grammar. It's based on Panini's grammar, because that's the most thorough rules of grammar, rules of linguistics, into which languages can be, all the kind of languages can be mapped. So language X, when you're speaking, is broken into this particular linguistic structure, the internal grammar of the computer, which is Paninian engine, and then it is brought out into language Y and put out. So this sort of thing will get better and better, and we'll have a revival of vernaculars, because it will be possible without labor-intensive human beings to take massive amount of text, whether it's legal cases, medical journals, scientific journals, political news, cricket commentary, whatever it is, will be more and more cost-effective to give it to you in the language of your choice, without so many human beings being involved to do this time-consuming and costly translation. So the return of vernaculars could happen. It's a very interesting product of technology. So I want to conclude with thanking all of you and thanking Swamiji and Amish. This is the final talk of my Bombay part of my tour. My tour started in Bangalore. I had 7 events, including a full-day workshop for a room full of this many kind of people who wanted to do a full-day workshop. And then Chennai, then back to Bangalore, where Shri Ravi Shankar called me to do a big launch in his Art of Living with several thousand people in the open campus. Then went to Ahmedabad, then came to Mumbai, and now I'm heading for Delhi. So usually my book launches start in Delhi. This time I'm ending in Delhi. And then I go back to the US. So I'll have done 23 public events, plus a whole lot of private events. And I really am very glad to see the traction build up from last time I did it to this time. A lot of traction. So things are, thanks to all of you, I feel there's a lot more people interested in our Sanskriti. And I'm humbled by that, and I'm trying my best to keep up with all the enthusiasm that gets generated. So thank you very much for listening, and I'd love to take any questions. Thank you.